My name is Triston Cole, running for state representative in the 105th district. I have a small farm down by Bel Air. I live with my wife, been married 16 years, and we've got 3 daughters, 6, 10, and 12. They go to a small charter school in Alba, North Central Academy, a wonderful school. I've been politically active for pushing 20 years now. I'm 38. Kind of my first board was with the Michigan Deer and Elk Farmers Association, was over some regulatory changes with the DNR and MDA at the time, moving some regulatory things. And that just kind of got me interested in the political process. I can back up a little further that being a 4-H member since the age of 10, I did an experience at Lansing called Capital Experience with 4-H and met then Representative Alan Lowe and Senator George McManus at the time. And it's funny now that I'm endorsed by Alan Lowe, so it's kind of interesting how that comes around. Never thought I'd necessarily be in this position. Through that, I found out that a lot of elected officials are just regular guys just like you and me. And in fact, that's what's missing in a lot of politicians is regular working folks like me that I drive a semi-truck, I've got a little farm, I've got a little family, and I care about the future for my kids. And that's what's caused me early on to get active in politics. I was active with Kevin Alzheimer's campaign, and he's the one that really planted the seed and said, you really ought to think about running for office one day. And I thought, oh, okay. And, but I did. When he was termed out, I ran in 2010 against a formidable opponent, Greg McMaster, with name ID of being on radio and TV for so long, over 10 years, in everyone's car, their home, I mean everywhere, all the time, all day long. I nearly beat Greg, 424 votes short in that race. There was a 6-way primary, if you remember. You weren't here at the time. Yeah. But it was a 6-way primary. I sat down with Brandon Hubbard, I think so it was. And I just simply worked hard, went to a lot of doors, and had a solid message of smaller government and being a voice for the people out there, and it resonated well. And while I was short of McMaster, he and I were 2,000 votes ahead of 3rd place. So basically, I had 100% more votes than 3rd place. We doubled them, so we're way out front. I stayed active the night of the primary. When Greg beat me, I called him up and said, Greg, we had a great race. I'm willing to work with you all along. I want to get ready to run in 6 years. And I did that. Helped Greg all along with many ag issues, helped pass 2 pieces of legislation that directly impacted people. In fact, it may have impacted you guys. With 2 things, actually a meeting, back up a little, a meeting at our farm at the time with Greg and the Lieutenant Governor. 2 issues, farm stands and DOT regulations. At the time, DOT regs required any truck over 10,001 pounds to have DOT numbers on their side, like you guys' delivery trucks that you may deliver newspapers with. That historically had been 26,001 pounds was the threshold. So now there was a new requirement on farmers, on people moving boats around from the marina, landscapers, lots and lots of small businesses, and people that have fleets of trucks. In 11 months, we had removed that regulation and moved it back to 26,000 pounds. I believe it was a unanimous vote. Because of the work that we did, I worked through Farm Bureau to change some policy there, and then worked with the other legislators and got that done. That was a big success, took regulation off of folks. The second one took a lot longer because I started earlier. It took 5 years, but it revolved around farm stands. And many people have roadside farm stands. They're very common. Most people didn't realize that if you had a farm stand where you went inside, say it was a handy barn, so you could close the doors at night to keep the raccoons out of the strawberries or the sweet corn, you needed a drinking fountain, handicap, fire suppression, bathrooms, all that stuff to allow customers to go in this little structure to buy their sweet corn and zucchinis. It took 5 years to change that law, believe it or not. But I was successful in that one as well because I worked diligently with Farm Bureau to change ag policy there and then educate lawmakers because many of them just said, this can't be true. Well, it was, but the building inspectors in the different counties didn't enforce it because everybody likes to buy from the local farmer. Well, 5 years later, I did get the signature with or the picture with the governor signing that piece of legislation. So I've proven to be effective changing regulation that impacts everyday people's lives. And that's what I want to continue doing as a state rep. The other thing that I found, especially knocking on doors in 10 and knocking on doors this year, is that most people don't realize that they can have contact and a personal relationship with their elected officials. For example, I was on Beaver Island a few weeks ago. There was a business owner over there that provided gasoline to boats on the water, the only gas station that fueled up boats in the water. She was shut down for 2 weeks during their season. I said, wow, you got a 2-month season, you lost 2 weeks, that's huge. You can't withstand that sort of a loss. Why didn't you call your state rep to see if there's any way he could speed that up and deal with whatever it was after your season? I didn't know that I could. Your taxpayer dollars are funding people that are to help you navigate the system, our laws and regulation, and so many people don't know that state reps and senators are available to them. Pick up the phone and call. Hey, I've got a problem.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we hear a lot in this campaign about, well, not in your campaign, but just in general campaigns, we hear a lot about, Medicaid expansion, the Affordable Care Act. Even up here with the Enbridge oil pipeline in the Straits, and things that are federal issues that, sure, you have your opinion, you press your own representatives, representatives in the federal government on those. But I guess my question is, what do you see as the role of a state legislator? Is it helping your constituents navigate the system?
It is. I'll give you another example. Let's say you've got a gas station or a convenience store that has a liquor license and you're moving your location. Well, you also have to transfer your liquor license. Many times that can take a long time. I was campaigning with Representative Stamas, who's the floor leader, he's running for Senate, and he had an example of where it was going to be a 2-week delay for a store owner in his district to move literally a couple of blocks without their liquor license. That's unacceptable. I mean, that's a lot of revenue that runs through a store to pull your customers in. He literally went down, sat in the lobby, and basically forced them to hurry up and print the license. He said he went outside, took a picture of it, emailed it so they could get the order done, and then he hand-delivered that license to the store. That's the kind of things that representatives should be doing, because a store owner doesn't have time to drive to Lansing, first of all, doesn't know where to go, and who to see, and what are they going to do? They're going to laugh at you down there. What are you doing here? It's in processing.
Yeah.
But a state representative that can vote on the budget, that has a lot more power, can help navigate those things and really speed that up for a lot of people.
As you're campaigning for the 105th district, what's the main issue facing residents, voters in that?
Well, it's jobs. Jobs. Number one. Jobs. Look, I've got 3 little kids. I care about their future to stay in northern Michigan. That's what I'm seeing at the doors. People are, my son's here, my kids had to leave. We're waiting to sell our house because our kids all moved away. I love northern Michigan. I want them to have options here. They may leave, that's their choice, but I want to make sure that they have a viable option to stay here in northern Michigan, and I want that for other families as well.
How do we do that? I think of looking at the demographics, trends that show young families, school-age children leaving northern Michigan, possibly even the state. I think statewide student enrollment is way down too. How do we get those jobs? Well, specifically in the 105th.
Right. First of all, we've got to make Michigan a magnet for job creators. We can't be taxing our businesses to death. We can't be prohibitive or where it's too expensive to operate a business here. We need to be the best place to locate a business. Number one, we have some of the hardest working people here that there is in the country. I spoke to a business owner, and I can't remember the name of the business, but he was from Charlotte, had a couple of homes there. And he had a global business from locations all over the world. And he said simply, I come to Michigan because you guys have the hardest workers. You have the best people here. They're the best educated, hardest working people. But Michigan is the worst place to locate a business. I come here, I grab my talent, and I take them everywhere else. And that just struck a nerve with me. I'm thinking, I don't want you doing that. We need smart, hardworking people here. So how do we do that? We make Michigan the best place by reducing regulation, continuing. The governor's done a good job. He's reduced, I don't know if it's 2,000, 1,500 different regulations. They've also put a few more on. But we need to continue making it easier for businesses to locate and operate in the state of Michigan. Particularly, say, Gaylord, say, Elk Rapids, East Jordan. We have infrastructure in place. We have the people that are capable of doing the jobs and working. We've got schools, take Boyne City Schools, the robotics program. They're turning out high schoolers ready to go to work. We've got all these different things. We've got the ag program that I helped start in Ellsworth. You know, we've got all these exciting things happening. We've got kids coming out and ready to go to work. Yet we don't have the companies here because they don't want to relocate to northern Michigan.
You mentioned your work since the 2010 campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that exists now, a regulation or a tax that you could foresee making it easier if eliminated, making it better on the business community?
Oh, the personal property tax, that change, I would have eliminated the whole thing. Because that is another step to making Michigan the best place to do business, to open a small manufacturing shop to do that. That would make somebody say, you know what? If all things are equal, I'm going here because Michigan just removed that. That's an expense that I don't have to worry about.
Then how do you replace that revenue?
Using conservative principles, anytime you reduce regulation and lower taxes, that increases revenue to the government because you have more economic activity. When the money, which would be put into the hands of the private person, into the business owner, which would allow them to hire more people, that puts economic activity into the private sector, that does increase revenue to the government.
Okay. I've heard this for the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it actually work yet. So we've been eliminating regulations left and right for the past 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Going crazy on
And we're no longer at the bottom in the state of Michigan. We've come.
We are near the bottom. We're like 48, so that's not true to say we're no longer at the bottom. But we haven't moved up that far.
We're still recovering from the Granholm years.
So that's now I want to know is if you get rid of the personal property tax, we're already having a hard enough time funding schools and funding local government. How do you replace that revenue then?
One thing that you need to understand is government's too big. There's too many people. The departments are too large. We have government that is too big right now. It's not capable of moving and changing as we need in the environment in the state of Michigan. We need to have a smaller government that costs less to operate, more streamlined. We have technology that can take the place of many of these things. We've got a liability for retirements out there that's astronomical from state employees. We need to reduce the size of government, free up the private sector to operate.
Give me an example of reducing the size of government, because I've also heard this one many times over the past several years.
Okay.
I can tell. I don't really want to just hear
I'll give you an example.
the words you see on
I'll give you an
budgets. I want to hear the
example.
plan.
I'll give you an example. For example, why is the state involved in building codes? I don't think it's necessary. Many states don't have one. Okay, why isn't the private sector running that? Why isn't the insurance companies? Why isn't home builders? Why isn't the construction companies running the building codes? We don't need the state of Michigan involved in that. If you need insurance or you want insurance on your structure, then you bill it to the codes set forth by the insurance industry. It's easy. Why does the government need to be involved? There's an example right there. We can reduce the size of government. The private sector is capable of handling many aspects that the government does, and probably actually better, maybe even more restrictive, but it would come from the private sector, and we wouldn't have government taking over all of these things that people are fully capable of doing. Just as an idea, that's just one.
So I want to hear ideas.
What about the Pure Michigan campaign? Is that something that you agree with be spending money?
You know, I think the Pure Michigan campaign is wonderful. It's been fantastic. I hear great things about it all over the place. I would like to see it transition to a separate funding source, something from the private sector. But I like Pure Michigan.
Talk about that a little bit more. So you say you'd like a different funding source.
I think there's
do you have an idea for how this is funded? I mean,
there's some ways, that the golf industry could pool some resources to fund the golf course side, the hunting and fishing side. I'm sure there's some ways that we could do that through, say lures or live bait. I mean, there's different ways that the users or that the particular parts of the industries could fund the Pure Michigan.
Does any public money belong in that?
Well, right now it's funded by public.
Sure, but I'm saying in your ideal world.
But we would taper off of that. I mean, again, that's another way to move things to the private sector and away from taxpayer dollars and government. I think that Pure Michigan campaigns are fantastic, but I think they're also capable of being run through the private sector.
Okay.
I mean, look, the ag industry, we do, with Michigan Farm Bureau, they do things all the time. Why can't, the golf industry do the same thing? They could get together and put together wonderful Pure Michigan golf ads, and you don't need the taxpayers to do it. There's the question about, the very small courses or the very small operations being able to buy into that. I think that the way that they're run, the way the ads are done, could cover the could cover the entire segment that they're looking at doing an ad for. But I'm a big private sector guy. I like to lay everything on the table and say, look, why are we constantly going to government as our first choice to do these things? Why aren't we looking towards the private sector to solve some of these issues?
What about roads? Do you have a particular plan, whether it's one that exists now in the legislature that's being discussed or something you've got?
It's a moving target all the time.
Sure.
That's being discussed.
Okay, so
without reading the language on a given day, given hour, that's hard to
okay.
make a decision on that.
What's the? How do we get there? How do we create this?
Let's start with, before we look at raising revenue, because I believe people in Northern Michigan, again, it goes back to being a magnet here. I think we're taxed enough. I think there's enough revenue in government. I'm a truck driver. I'm on these roads every day. I drive an average of probably, 500 miles a day on the roads. I'm going down, let me make sure I get my highways right. 75, I'm not sure if there's any going on 27 right now, but on 75, let's say, if you look along there, you'll see these tall single poles. They got a camera on top. Okay? You can go to the MDOT website, you can pull those cameras up. I could literally go to the MDOT website, pull up a camera, say the intersection of US 31 and M88 in Eastport, and I could look at my political signs. I could check and see if they were still there by going to the MDOT website and looking at them. Oh, why are we spending revenue on that? Well, why isn't that revenue first prioritized into repairing our roads and bridges directly?
Are these traffic cameras? Or
there's hundreds of them. They're going up every day.
But they're meant so the public can see if there's traffic going on there, or is it just, hey, I want to check in on this corner?
You name the reason.
Okay.
Okay, what are they for, and why aren't they fixing the roads first? So I see there's a lot of money in the system that's not going to fixing roads. And that's the first place to start. Now, is there a way to move around revenue? Probably there is.
Yeah, well, and I understand the example, but we're talking pennies there, drop in the bucket.
But we are. But if I see that, what am I not seeing? Where are these other wastes out there? And that's the first place in your house when you operate your budget. You don't automatically go, well, I guess I need to get a second or a third job, raising tax revenue, raising revenue to your house. You think, where am I leaking money? Where can I consolidate? Where can I get better expenditures? And at the end of the day, if you can't do it, then you need to look at some other revenue sources.
What about increasing the fuel tax? Is that something that you'd ever consider?
After the privatization. I'm the kind of person that would put everything on the table. Once we've looked at, I call them the low-hanging fruit. I mean, when they're doing cameras versus paving roads or fixing bridges, that piece is falling off them. That's a problem.
I keep hearing this prioritization.
Yeah.
This year, the umpteenth candidate I've heard this from. What do you think they've been doing for the past 6 years?
I think they've been protecting state jobs.
You think they've been protecting state jobs?
Absolutely. I think that we've got departments in Michigan right now that are more worried about protecting their jobs than actually being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
With the heavy conservative legislature that we have.
I'd argue that they're conservative. I would argue
protecting state jobs.
You've got to remember the departments are huge. An elected official can't fire anybody. You can't fire anybody. We've got directors that protect all kinds of people, and there are hundreds and hundreds of people in these departments. If there was a budget crunch here, somebody's getting fired. That's how it happens. Because you have to consolidate to fit your revenue stream. And then at the end of the day, after you do that, that's when you may raise the cost of the newspaper. But you don't just, oh, we need more money, let's raise paper. That's not the first thing you go to.
So, so I understand, when you talk about prioritizing budget though, then, you've got your things on the top, which I take as you saying roads would be your number one.
Roads are a big deal,
Okay,
right?
so then as we go down, do you see, what is that? Again, I know you mentioned the cameras, but do you see what that low-hanging fruit is that would be, come underneath the line there? Programs that we might cut or something that you get rid of?
Are we getting the best cost when we're looking at, bid jobs right down to the township level? Why aren't we looking, for example, I'll give you another example. Okay, let's say you're a landowner and you own land on both sides of a seasonal road. And your county ignores that seasonal road and it's full of holes and mud puddles, it's destroyed. You cannot fix that road. Even if you have the heavy equipment to flatten and grade that road, you can't do it, it's illegal. Why is that? Why can't you fix a road? That doesn't make sense. So if you complain loud enough, the county's going to spend taxpayer dollars and they're going to come out there and they're going to grade the road. When they could have said, okay, listen, you can grade the road, we want to come and look at it, then we'll look at what you did, make sure it's safe and legal now, all that. Why aren't we doing that? There's so many things that, again, the private sector is capable of doing. They're just simply not doing because that's a union job. That's a government job right there. You're taking away government work. We don't have enough money for the government to, for the jobs to be done that are currently available right now.
Yeah. Well, or
Farmers run into that a lot. They'll have a seasonal road that runs to their farm or something. They got the equipment there. They could literally drop the disc. They could, loosen the gravel. They could go back through and grade it right flat. Perfect. They're the only ones that are traveling right anyways for the most part. A local private, property owners. We're not talking highways here. Yep, we're not looking at those things. So this goes right down to the very local level. And the other thing is the departments are not necessarily looking at things as a customer service. They're looking at it as, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do right here. They're not looking at what us, the taxpayers, expect.
Let's talk a couple education-related issues. I guess the first we could talk about is Common Core.
I'm against Common Core.
Okay, and why is that?
Because the federal government has no role dictating what the state of Michigan does with their education system. And further, if it's such a great idea, why do you have to force it? Why not make it voluntary? I can use an example in the private sector right now. Look at the MEEP program, Michigan Environmental Assurance program with farming. It's a voluntary program. We got hundreds of people, thousands of people signing up under that. It's a good program.
Yeah.
If Common Core was so great, why do you have to force it?
Don't you think you need level playing standards across the board in this country, though?
It's not a role of the federal government. Absolutely.
But look, there is still level control on how they're implemented.
Yes. Well, there is and there isn't. I'm dealing with this at my school right now, and it's amazing how confusing the new Common Core methods are that they're required to implement. North Central Academy.
How do you mean confusing? Like
They're not doing repetition with say, learning multiplication tables. They're doing pyramid things, and they're doing all. It's just a very different way of learning, and.
But what's wrong with the different way of learning?
It hasn't been proven. Was our system broken?
We're not keeping up with the rest of the world in education. That's for sure.
Where did the innovations from the world come from?
All over. But right now,
Most of them come from America.
okay. But
50 years ago.
yeah,
Right.
we're falling behind.
So is it truly our education system or the degrading of the family that's caused the problem with education? Are parents holding their students to as high standards to say you will finish school, you will get good grades, you will go to college? Are they doing that, or is it our education system, or are they trying to?
Wait a minute. Are you trying to tell us that the problem with the education system is the degradation of the U.S. family?
I think it plays a role. Absolutely, because parents aren't insisting their kids get good grades.
I think that that's a pretty big generalization.
I care about my kids' grades. I sit down and do homework with. After campaigning, after working 60 hours a week, I sit down and make sure my kids have an understanding of what they're studying in school. I think it's important that parents take an active role in the education of their kids. Again,
But you don't think that, like, say, one student in Massachusetts should be at the same, and say a student in 6th grade in Massachusetts should be at the same level in math, reading, and science as a student in California?
It's not a role of federal government to ensure that. Absolutely, I think it's a great idea. Common Core has a great idea.
Wait, why isn't it the role of federal government?
Because it's not in our Constitution. It's not there. The states can do it. The states are free to set these things up. However, it's not the role of the federal government. That's an expenditure right there. We could get rid of the Federal Department of Education. It's unnecessary. We have fully capable people in the state of Michigan, in the state of Ohio, name the state. All the states are fully capable of operating their own education system.
So there is a role or a place for some sort of standardized education set at the state level.
State level.
And then
I'd be fine with something coming out of the state level, absolutely. Totally fine with that. I understand the concept. If I move to Florida, then I can ensure that my kid's going into 5th grade is the same. But as a parent, I would say, well, I guess I need to do some research on the schools where I'm moving to find out which is the best fit for my son or daughter. That's where I'm not against the idea of some standardization. It's just who's forcing it and where is it coming from? Where's it originating from? That's my biggest problem with it. And if I, as a parent, want to choose a school that's not following a Common Core standard, that should be my choice.
okay.
So I'm not as anti this as you might think. I just want to make sure there's choices for parents out there. I want the choice as a parent.
Now let's talk about the proposal that we found some legislation introduced. Of course, it wasn't from Republicans; it was from Democrats on the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. Do you support an amendment
No.
to the Civil Rights Act that would include protections for?
All people are created equal. And if you start carving out for this group, for that group, I mean, look, I believe that the Democrats are trying to create a problem for a solution. I've talked to many people, business owners. I said, do you personally know someone that was discriminated against? I don't think I've run into anybody yet that says, yes, I know this person, and he was discriminated here for this reason. It's not existent.
Are you saying you would get rid of the Elliott Larson Act outright?
No.
Well, you just said,
I
why
think-
do we need to have
Right.
carving out for
I think it just creates animosity between different people. And there's no reason for that. I see everyone as equal. I mean, if you can do the job, you get the job.
But we already have the Elliott Larson Act. We
Right.
already have.
I don't support creating yet another president.
But this is being supported by, you mentioned Democrats. It's not being supported by just Democrats. It's
No, there's
supported by
Republicans.
a lot of Republicans, including, and it's also supported by chambers of commerce, including the local chamber of
I
commerce.
understand. The folks at the door don't support it. The people out there don't support it. Look, Lee Chatfield won the landslide. People don't support this stuff because they don't see a problem.
Well, and I understand.
That's the reason. I mean, why it's creating more government. It's creating more and more and more. We don't need that. The private sector works all this out. Okay, so this person doesn't want to hire me for whatever reason. Okay, so I go get a job somewhere else. So you want to be forced to employ?
Here's what I'm having a hard time understanding here.
Okay.
What this is, you already have the Elliott Larson Act. The Elliott Larson Act already forbids discrimination based
Race,
on race.
sex.
Yeah, so what you're arguing is, you're kind of arguing that we shouldn't have, that we don't have discrimination on those, so we shouldn't have that either. But then I ask you whether or not you want to get rid of the Elliott Larson Act, you say no, and it sounds like, is it just the gay rights issue?
It is. That's a big part of it. It is. People
Why?
don't support that because they're just people like you and me. Why preferential special treatment? Why do you need a carve out?
So are people who are African American.
I see it that way.
and
I see
Jewish.
everybody equally.
There are people just like you and I, so
Absolutely.
we've got them in the Elliott Larson Act.
Is it necessary today? I would ask you that. Is it necessary?
Is-
I really feel everyone's equal across the board. There's so many options today for people with employment, where you live. There's it's so much different. The environment today is so different. Why is the government injecting itself into these things?
I want to just be clear, I want to make sure that we are absolutely clear
Okay.
on this. Do you believe that discrimination doesn't exist anymore.
I believe it does exist,
Okay.
but it's not. It's in individuals' hearts and minds. Government's not going to change that. You can't legislate how somebody feels.
Since we're on the issue of discrimination,
Right.
this is a perfect chance for you to explain that comment that you made at the debate, what was it, 4 years ago?
Oh, in 2010, down in Gaelic?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll just tell you what it is.
Explain what happened.
Okay. We were talking about some of the money problems of Detroit. Former Representative Ken Bradstreet was asking the question about, how do we solve some of the issues with Detroit? I'm the kind of person, I'm not necessarily politically correct, I just say it how it is. Since I don't personally hold any ill will towards anyone, lay it on the table, let's talk about this stuff. And then people like you in the media immediately pounce on me and say, and you're putting thoughts and things and thinking that I say it out of, with one feeling when I don't.
But you see, you said it, and we give you a chance to explain why it is you said that. So I'm giving you a chance to explain. What is it meant? You said,
let's see. Okay, so we're looking at Kwame Kilpatrick. We're looking at Coleman Young. We have a history in Detroit of fraud and abuse of taxpayer dollars. The abuse of programs down there. That's not good for people. That's not good for people. It doesn't allow people to flourish and be successful. I'm just willing to lay everything on the table and say, hey, is this working?
Yeah, but you blamed it on the black leadership of Detroit.
Kwame Kilpatrick, Coleman Young.
But so my thing would be then that's two people, and you're lumping it into an entire race of folks. I mean, that is.
So I inartfully laid it out. I inartfully laid that out there using that terminology. I don't hold ill will towards anyone. To me, it's just let's lay the problem on the table. Let's talk about it. And those two people popped to mind immediately of the fraud and corruption in that part of the state of Michigan. But for people to come out and say otherwise, that I may feel a certain way, that's despicable, actually. Like I said, I think that the issues need to be laid on the table. We have to be able to have adult conversations without accusing people of thinking or believing anyway. Let's solve the problems. Let's be the best stewards possible for the taxpayer dollars and create the best environment in Michigan for people to be the best they can be. It's really easy. And that's how I look at all of these issues. Remember, I didn't come through the public education system, and that's not an excuse or anything, but I was never put in a box about things are done this way. Well, why are we doing them that way? Why not look over here and do them maybe this way? Why don't we look at other states, other ways that things are working, and put them on the table too?
What does that have to do with public education?
For example, the school that my kids go to uses a thing called integrated visual learning, and it's a way that your brain operates and how you learn. That's not used in any other schools. Okay, so if you take three things on a table like this, in the early stages, a child may go 1, 2, 3, and the next stage would be 1, 2, 3, and then the next stage is 3. There's a process in how your brain operates. Why are we looking at some of those things? There's a way that there's education models out there that are totally different. I mean, you can integrate some of these things, but they're not able to because of things like Common Core. Their schools aren't able to explore different ways of learning in those schools. And I think, wipe it all off, put it all on the table. This might work over here. Then this one might do a hybrid of something else, and it will work for each of those schools because the superintendent, the principal, and the school board, they will find what's best. The teachers, you may have a teacher that excels at the visual learning process. You may have a teacher that can't stand it, can't teach it. And that's okay.
Well, I want to go back. You kind of made a slam on public education there. You said
I think they're
a project of public education. So what did you say?
I think their hands are tied by state mandates. That's what this, going back to the superintendent told me, leave me alone.
Okay.
Quit micromanaging my school. I think that local communities can best handle their education needs. Or if they can't handle it there, they're going to find ways to do it. We have smart people. They can do it. It's just a different way of looking at things. Maybe I've never heard that before, but.
Some environmental related things, and I guess the first one, what do you think about the future of alternative energy in Michigan? Is it something that we're about to meet our state mandated 10% by 2015 goal for how much energy should be generated from renewable sources. Do you think it's the governor's talking about next year after the elections, new legislature start talking about expanding that, what the policy ought to be going forward? Would you support anything that does increase that percentage that must be generated by renewable sources by a certain time? I know Democrats have proposed 30 by 2035. You may say that's too much. I don't know, but would you support anything that expands that?
I don't think it's a role of government to force that on the private sector. I think if it's financially viable for the electrical production plants, they'll do it. They'll exceed that if it's economically viable. But why would the state or the federal government force that? That's not a role. Well, I think that the best thing that the energy companies can do is they look at their bottom line and they find out what's the most economical way to produce energy and then provide it to the consumer.
So how do you weigh that against against the impacts of coal-fired power plants on our globe? At what point does it become necessary for somebody to give them that
to step in and do something?
Yeah, to give them the push, say we need to invest in this.
Look, it is if I'm not one that believes that humans are causing any of the global climate change that may or may not be occurring. Most of these things, one volcano far exceeds any of the stuff that we're doing.
You do realize that NASA, the National Weather Service, NOAA, and 99% of all scientists disagree with you, right?
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
Where's your facts on this?
Everywhere. I mean,
So how much global warming has transpired? What has changed? Tell me the exact number. Because I have a number that was just out. I think I heard it yesterday.
I'm just telling you that every scientist out there disagrees with you.
Are humans
and that this isn't a debate according to scientists. Why
are humans causing it?
The majority of scientists are saying yes.
A lot of us disagree with that. And I think
Not a lot of scientists.
I could probably find just as many that disagree as that you find that agree.
Doubtful, because there's a lot more that agree that it's human climate change than there are that disagree. The ones that aren't paid for by the oil industry.
Well, we're going to disagree on that, and that's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, we can. And the next issue.
See, here, I want to stay in energy for just a minute. Okay, to be a good steward, why do we need? Why would we promote or give tax incentives to windmills and solar generation capabilities to push the 10% or green energy mandates when we have to have 100% duplication capabilities through coal-fired or some other form? That's not a good investment of taxpayer dollars to offer those subsidies. Why not let the private sector develop our energy solutions? Okay, and I think the oil industry is the perfect companies to do this because they want to maintain relevancy in the future. They have the capabilities to develop the power sources of the future. We should be promoting more use of natural gas. There's things that we can do to get away from coal, but we can't penalize energy production. For example, to make northern Michigan, a magnet for job creators, we have to have the power sources. Okay?
Oh, sorry.
Our infrastructure is aging. Our power sources are over 50 years old. We're coming. They're winding down, and we need to start ramping up. Windmills aren't going to do it.
What about battling the utility companies? I don't know if on your farm you use any sort of wind power or anything like that, but I know some do, and whether it's residential or commercial or whatever it might be, that there are policies. The utility companies make it difficult for people to. There are limitations on how much power they can create on their own, off the grid or behind the meter, I guess is the term.
Right. If you're hooked up to the system, that is. I would be.
Would you support making it easier for residential and commercial private people to.
Yes, if you want to put up a windmill and create all your own power, more power to you. That's fantastic. I fully support that. I think that more people could be self-sufficient in that way and generate more of their own power if you're in a location that maybe wind works for you or maybe solar works for you. I think the more people that start doing that, it's going to lower the cost because there's going to be more demand and more companies are going to start creating these things. I see the private sector as driving this more so than government regulation.
There have been a couple instances this year where the legislature acted so as to preempt a ballot measure down the road, and one with the minimum wage where they actually did increase it, but not to the level that would have been put in front of voters. The other with the wolf hunt, and whether that ought to be allowed in the Upper Peninsula. I guess I mean, it's already been decided. So, but I guess I'd just briefly ask you: did you agree with the minimum wage increase, and did you agree with the wolf hunting decision?
I disagree with the minimum wage issue right now. I was talking to my brother down in Traverse City right now. In many cases, if the economic environment is very strong, minimum wage is irrelevant. Right now, even a very bottom-end job in Traverse City, you're looking at probably $10 or $12 an hour, which is far above what minimum wage is. So changing the minimum wage really makes you and I work less because we didn't see an increase. Yet if somebody just entering the workforce takes a minimum wage job, they're closer to where we are than before. I have issues with that. There's many jobs right now in areas like Traverse City that have a strong economic engine going right now that are going to start you at $15 an hour. Minimum wage is irrelevant. Minimum wage is never intended to be a living wage. It's just a starting point. It's not a career option. I mean, as someone that hires people periodically to say pick an agricultural commodity, is a 15-year-old kid worth $10 an hour to pick strawberries? It's his first time he's ever worked, and I've got to babysit him because I mean, there's just a lot of options out there. A lot of instances rather out there. I don't think it really made a difference.
But it's not just 15-year-old kids with minimum wage jobs. Some cases it's single parents trying to make ends meet. The only thing that's available out there are minimum wage jobs.
Right. That's true, but they're still not considered to be career jobs. And if you apply yourself, how long did you stay at minimum wage?
But if someone wants to live in this area,
Right.
Charlevoix, Bel Air, for example, a lot of those jobs are minimum wage. Because we don't have the industry up here currently
So what would
to
you
support.
propose we do?
We need better paying jobs,
Right.
and I think
So we need to, so do you think the government should then say, well, everybody up here, you need to pay $20 an hour?
I'm not the one making the choices.
But
You can't deny that most of the jobs in this area
are lower paying jobs.
are lower paying jobs.
Yes, because.
So you can't just tell somebody on a lower paying job to get another job
No, you can't.
if they live here.
That's right. So what we need to do is we need to create more competition for the workers that are here. For example, we had the plywood company move out of Gaylord because they were no longer profitable. We had Dura Automotive move out of Mansalona because they were no longer profitable. That company made the decision to leave. Okay, why did they do that? So as a state legislator, I would be looking at this from the aspect of why don't they want to move here? Why do they want to leave here? If we have more competition for the workers, wages go up. Because you can't say to the fudge shop downtown, you must pay your employees $12, $15 an hour. They're going to go out of business.
Well, let's move on anyway because
I want to create more jobs.
Yeah,
that's going to raise the wages.
And
way above minimum wage.
We've been trying to keep this to stuff, not just with you, like I'm saying, with others, too, where we're moving it forward, and these are issues that were already decided and may come up again, but not in the, But something that will certainly come up again is this process through which they did this, where they were able to. And actually, you might want to ask the question.
What they did was, and just I always like if we editorialize something, I always like to say we've editorialized on it.
Okay.
And we have editorialized on this issue.
Okay.
And it's a process. As far as the wolf hunt goes, as far as the minimum wage goes, those are old issues. They've already been decided. What we're interested in is the process that was used.
Okay.
Okay. And the process was where citizens went out and they started a petition.
Mhm.
Okay, and then once they get enough signatures, petition goes to the legislature.
Mhm.
And the legislature has a decision whether or not they want to agree with that petition and make it a law, and it becomes a law without the governor's signature,
Mhm.
or just goes on to the ballot.
Mhm.
Now, the issue that we've got is that part of the process, where it goes to the legislature, and the legislature gets to decide whether or not it's law, and it goes without the governor's signature. And we've argued that that violates checks and balances. Okay, we would rather at least go to the governor for his signature. We would actually rather than just go right to the voters for them to decide. What do you think of that process?
Which one of the two issues that we just talked about would you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the wolf hunt?
No, I don't want to talk about. I want to talk about the process.
The process.
We don't. I mean,
Okay.
the wolf hunt,
Okay.
the minimum wage. There have been other issues.
I'd like to see the governor's signature on things. I think that's appropriate. You know, when you're looking at things where where you've got a lot of armchair quarterbacks on things, they may not have all the scientific data behind something. Say the wolf hunt, for example. I heard the argument that your voice wasn't heard. Well, that's not true, because you voted for the elected officials that have greater access to people that have the facts. And so you put them in place with your voice, and you can pull them out with your choice to make that decision. And so I think we have a good process, because if you don't like a decision that the legislature makes, you can recall them, you can run somebody against them in a primary. I mean, you've got a lot of different ways to go against it.
And I understand that's a very fair argument. That's a good argument, and
Yeah.
I understand that point. And the only thing I'd say is that, of course, we're hearing all these Republicans say this now. What happens in 10 years or 20 years if the situation flips and you get a Democratic-controlled legislature? They're the ones doing, take a X policy that they, and they're the ones implementing this or using the same process. I'm sure the Republicans would say, "No, this is unfair."
Bloody murder, I know.
Yeah, so why not? And you did say that you would amend it to at least include the governor's
I don't know if I'd
signature.
amend it. I would want to talk to my fellow legislators about that, because you need to look long-term. Okay, so when the Republicans are not in power, what happens when it's a Democrat? What is the best choice? It's not what's here now is the best choice. You've got to look long-term on these things, and I'm not in a position to make that decision right now. I think that things get blown out of proportion many times. That, my voice isn't getting heard. It is, because your elected official, which you do have a direct impact on, is making a decision, which he was elected to do by the people.
Is there any legislation that you push to introduce in your, first 3 months, first 6 months, whatever it might be? Is there something that you can't wait to get in there and say, this is what I want to?
A lot of times legislators are judged on their effectiveness by what kind of laws they pass. I think many of it would be, the judgment should be on maybe that I didn't pass laws, that I helped repeal some things. It's not what I passed, it may be what I made easier for the newspaper industry to operate. Just as an example of what I've done previously with the DOT legislature, made it easier for companies to operate. I'm more interested in doing that. The big things are always going to be out there, always. Global warming, energy, all these things, abortion, you name it, those are going to be out there. But I think the best place for a state legislator to make the most impact is with the small things, which I have a proven track record of doing. And working with names and faces, I've done a lot of knocking on doors with businesses, and many of them have said, "You're the first person to ever come here." And I'm thinking, why is that? Why am I the first person to come into a major employer in a community and say, what can state government do to make your business run more smoothly? What can I do to help you be more successful, which creates more jobs, creates a better environment for jobs in Michigan? More of that interaction, I think. To me, that's where I will look for successes.
Same lines of interaction with your constituents. Let's say you've got an issue that's a hot button issue, and you feel very strongly on that. I'm trying to think of an issue that. Give me an issue that you think would be.
We can use the wolf hunt, that's fine.
Okay,
I do have a head, there's lots of them, I mean,
we'll go more, let's say, second.
Okay.
Okay,
Fair.
background checks.
Sure.
You have to do background checks in all kinds. This initiative's coming for you.
Which you have to do.
I'm completely going very far,
Okay.
out there as far
All
as, let's say, I imagine you're pretty strong in Second
I
Amendment.
am.
Okay, so would you support, universal background checks?
We already have. Well, I knew guys, but not private sale, we don't.
Okay, so let's say this would be stronger background checks and that. You feel very strongly this is needed, right?
Right.
But let's say you hear from a majority of your constituents all saying, we want this. How would you vote?
You know, I'm not in that situation right now. I will make a vote. I can tell you that. I will not. There's no chance. There's no choice at present in the state house. You have a yes and a no button, and I'll vote yes or I'll vote
How do
no.
you see I mean, the makeup of the legislature will change, and of course, the House Speaker won't be there. But how do you see yourself fitting in with the leadership down there? Not, I mean, are you eye to eye with them, or are you?
I mean, you can look it up. You probably know that I publicly supported Kevin Cotter for Speaker of the House if I'm successful in the November election. I think it's going to be different. The makeup will be different of leadership and how they operate. It's looking like it may be a more conservative mindset, which isn't a bad thing. It actually is going to help create less regulation and move Michigan towards a more business-friendly environment. I'm looking forward to working with whoever's elected into leadership.
What'd you think of that whole effort to oust Brian Calley as the lieutenant governor?
I came out and publicly supported Brian Calley. I personally like the guy. I think he's done an effective job as lieutenant governor. I think he's been doing a good job. So that's why before the state convention, I came out, I issued a press release and said I support Brian Calley. I think it's the responsibility of community leaders to make a decision and not just hang back and not make a call when it comes to things like that. Again, people are going to vote for me in our confidence that I'll make a good decision and be able to articulate that message back to them. Not play politics and not answer questions. But, a lot of this is still hypothetical because I haven't been elected. And we don't have specific language, and that's all still very, very fluid.
If you were elected, would you support measures to change the state of Michigan's process of doling out electoral votes for the presidential election from a winner-take-all to a congressional district?
I like the congressional district. That's where, the current rule that was just changed, last week or the week before, 50% plus one, and then it's winner take all. Any less than that, then it's by congressional district. I think that's important because if it's by congressional district, we're more likely to see candidates visiting northern Michigan. We're more likely to see them visiting each of the districts throughout their campaigns. I think that's important. However, if there's a strong candidate that gets more than 50% of the vote in the state of Michigan, they've earned those votes. It's all about making northern Michigan, specifically, the 105th district right now, but northern Michigan relevant within the state of Michigan. So in the legislature, I mean, we can do that, but that's where the state party and the other people make those decisions right now.
Recently, it's been reported that there's going to be some cuts in the food stamp program based on a federal food stamp program based on Michigan's opting out of some home heating credits. Are you aware of this?
Well, vaguely, I haven't studied the issue right now. I'm not in a position to vote on it. So
Would you support, from what you know, would you support revisiting that loophole?
I would, again, it's a federal issue.
Yeah, but you can still opt in or opt out of the food stamp, of the home heating credit, sorry.
I'd have to look at it a lot closer to see exactly what the minutiae of the details is before I make a decision on that. I would like to see the states in greater control of those programs, as far as can you buy Red Bull with food stamp money? Can you buy? I mean, it was very disheartening when I was working nights there on the semi, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm in a convenience store doing paperwork for a load of gas that I delivered, and a bunch of 20-something people walk in, perfectly able-bodied people, and buy a handful of beef jerkies, a bunch of energy drinks, and they pay for it with our tax dollars. And me working 60+ hours a week, I can't afford that stuff. That's bothersome. But yet the state of Michigan has no control over what can be purchased. Some of the other programs that we do have more control over work much better. The SNAP programs where it's milk and bread, it's staple items. I think that works much better.